All right. So we're going to start out tonight talking about we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit, and I'm going to make some unfortunate sports references that are really pertinent to what we're talking about and change, but I think you're going to like them. But tonight we're going to focus on lead change, execution of that lead change, and setup for success after we've kind of put the pieces in place. So as you guys know, you did your internal and external evaluations of the environment. And now comes the time where you're going to pick your strategies of how you want to save this company, right? So we're going to kind of work our way into that tonight as far as how to pick a strategy. We're going to do an exercise. And I will tell you, this exercise, it's going to be where every student has to give an answer. I'm giving you plenty of time to think about it now. This is like maybe like 4 or 5 slides in, or maybe like deeper in. Why do people resist change? So everybody's got to come up with a unique answer, all right? It can't be, you can't say, okay, I'm going to say what Cynthia said, because that's the right thing to do. So we're going to look at why people resist change. And then collectively, I'm going to make a list. We're going to describe the 3 major obstacles to change, and then how we can identify strategies that can alleviate those obstacles. Because as we saw with our friends over at Vernon Road, they just weren't interested in delivering any type of communication that was going to help the organization out. It was really just, you're doing it my way. You don't like it, leave. So that's a little bit later on. We're going to talk about we're going to go over last week's discussion, talk about what you got going on for your project right now. And then we're going to have, we'll get into that exercise, then we'll pretty much wrap after that. So that's our outline for the evening. Any questions before we start?
I think so.
Like the news anchor. Shuffle my papers. Okay, so I want to start talking about Notre Dame football. All right, now look, I know it's a sports thing, but hear me out. So yesterday, Brian Kelly, head coach of Notre Dame football, a fellow Masshole, went to Assumption College, started their football program there as an intramural program. So anyway, he's coached Notre Dame for 10 seasons, took over for the most wins from legends. This guy's done things. And the program really hasn't won a championship when he was there, but he's got the most wins just from longevity. So anyway, he yesterday, he signs a deal to become LSU's, Louisiana State University's next head coach, right? LSU's big college football. It's like football down at LSU is like basketball to UConn. Like it's one of their beefier programs. But so, hey, good for him. 10 years gave to the university, right? But his players found out. How do you think the players found out?
The news and social media.
Social media, the news, right? So he goes out today, and at 7 a.m. this morning does his regular meeting, but this time it lasts about 4.5 minutes. And it's pretty much, yeah, I'm leaving. You guys are great. Wouldn't be here without you. We'll see you later, right?
Did kids show to the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He texted them the night before, like it got out on the news. He
Yeah.
texted the whole team.
Yeah, he texted him on the flight back. Said,
Yeah.
sorry for the late text.
bad.
So, and again, so I don't, we're just now, we take the sports aspect out of it. This guy was literally in the living room of families a few weeks ago saying, I really want your son to be a part of this culture. I want your son to be in this organization. I want him to spend the next 4 years with me. We're going to turn him into the professional person he can be. And, most kids that go to Notre Dame have aspirations to play pro football. But the reality is maybe 10% of that roster will end up being pro, but they can all think that, right? But so that's my thing. So again, a couple weeks ago, he's in the living rooms, maybe even having Thanksgiving dinner with some of these folks. And now this happens. And I don't begrudge him for making that jump, but what I do question is the integrity of, it was a very similar case to, yeah, we got rid of Jeff, Jeff's gone. We're just going to focus on, this is our team right here. This is the team that we're going to make it with. This is the team that we're going to, that we're going to turn the corner with. So for me as an individual and a fan, I'm a stakeholder because I'm a fan. All right. That's it. I don't have much. I don't have anything invested like those kids that committed to Notre Dame over USC or over Florida State or over Alabama. I don't have that kind of stake in the game. But as a fan, I can be like, you know what, I will root against LSU now just because you're there, and things like that. So I really felt bad for how it was delivered and how the students felt out. And from a change perspective, on paper, it was a good change. He's a football coach. He wants to coach at a premier program. That's a premier football program. Everything makes sense. However, the delivery sucked and he completely blew it. And he really took for granted that he had such a good relationship with these players. And I don't know if you heard Kate say, did any of the players show up to the meeting this morning? Yeah, about half of them showed up. So, which if you miss a football meeting or if you miss a sports meeting, don't even think about playing. And these guys are in a bowl hunt. They're looking to play for possibly a national championship. So it was a great example for me to show how change transcends industry. Like we were talking about Vernon Road for weeks. This happened yesterday in the news of a high profile organization that, again, a coach that's won more games at that university than anybody in the history of that university. So that's kind of a big deal. But anyway, I just wanted to show you how it's much more common than we think. It's not these big wholesale changes that have to happen. That program is going to play football in 2 weeks. He's not going to be, well, he probably will be there, but that program is going to play football. If I was the athletic director of Notre Dame, I'd say, hey, thanks a lot. We'll see you later. I'd have an assistant coach it, or I'd have somebody else step in and coach it, give them an opportunity to shine. But, life's going to go on. The university's not going to close. Ticket sales aren't going to go down. Jersey sales aren't going to go down. But the legacy that this person's leaving is what's really affecting the stakeholders for the next, 1 to 4 years. Students that he recruited who are ultimately going to bail. A lot of kids will bail. You'll see some go to LSU, and it's not as good academically, I guess. I don't know, but so anyway, that was my current event that I wanted to talk about before we get into guided involvement. So I really think guided involvement is, the AD and the president of Notre Dame could have taken a page out of Jack Welch's book with guided involvement. It had the conversation with Coach Kelly and said, this is how we're going to roll this out. This is what we should do. But unfortunately, and again, let's think about the time, right? If this is 1985, this guy's out of flight and back, nobody knows any different. Nobody saw him at the airport and tweeted about it, but because social media, the camera's on 24 hours a day, whatever change model they had in place got completely tossed because of a variable that they really either didn't consider, I hope, or didn't care, which I hope not. But so, okay, that's my, I think my one sports analogy for the night. All right. So
That's a good one though.
All right. Well, thank you, Kate. And it is a college. So it's a college. So I can kind of get away with it that way. All right. Who wants to talk about guided involvement? So I think it's a really, really, really important piece of getting that change in place. And who's done research on guided involvement? Anybody? Not everybody talking at once, please.
Well, I was gonna say in the reading for one of the two books, I think probably Dynamic Strategy Making, if I remember.
Yeah.
They had talked a little bit more about both the deliberate and I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact terminology, but I do remember them saying that, you know, one, obviously you focus a little bit more on the long term and the pieces, and the other ones kind of go fly by fly, but neither of them are really necessarily a great option, because there is a lot of different factors that are involved in the way that things evolve in today's society, with how quickly, you know, industry can change, business can change, technology can change. It's really hard to do either of those. So that I do remember that piece from the reading.
Have anybody, have you talked, or has anybody talked about in this program so far about the Jack Welch's 20-70-10 model? You guys, have you talked about that? Let me get my my Pappy Druid board. That was like an old Boston cartoon guy that used to draw, that you could call in and he'd draw a picture of whatever you called in on. So you guys really can't see. I'm gonna have to move this a little bit. We're taking you off the perch. We're gonna put you in a better seat. All right.
Feels like such a personalized experience.
Next, I'll do it with a GoPro next month. Okay, so Jack Welch, you guys know who Jack Welch was, right?
Well, now I know.
GE Capital.
Okay.
GE.
I didn't before.
Also, what would I particularly like about him?
He was a hard ass.
Close.
He was a man with a plan. Can't say that.
He was one of us.
What are you?
He was one of me. I'll erase that.
It's recorded anyway.
Right.
Yeah, right. We
I
already got it.
know, I'm already nailed on it, but, okay, so he came up with a 70, then you got a 20 and a 10. You gotta figure out which way is the best to, so. Is the glare killing you guys?
I can imagine what's there. It's like in a triangle, right? 70, 20, 10.
Yeah.
Nice, that's good. Better.
So you got this? Yeah. Right? So when you're building an organization and you're trying to get everybody on board, is it feasible to think everybody's going to be on board?
No.
No. So you've got your 20%. Your 20%. Those are your leaders. Those are your champions. Those are the ones that you send over to Crotonville to hang out at Jack's little leadership school, right?
Your
Well,
super keepers. Was
Zach-
that in, was that MSOL?
Yes. So you've got that 20%, that's your high end, okay? What is this 10%?
Lowen.
The naysayers.
Could be, maybe they're real good cheerleaders, but maybe they just suck, right? They're people that, those are the folks that,
The bottom feeders.
the bottom feeders. Those are the folks that are, and if you'll allow me, we'll make another sports metaphor here, but like with any sports team, right? Anybody pick a team, any team.
Giants.
New York Giants football?
Yep.
Okay. So New York Giants football, right? The football team, right around the end of early November, they have a trade deadline. So what are they going to do? What do most teams want to do around the trade deadline? Get rid of the weak players. And they want to get rid of the weak
Get new good ones in.
and get other players in that can serve more of a role for their organization, right?
And also save money.
Right, so in the process, saving money. So if you're an organization, you don't necessarily have a trade deadline. A lot of people look at the trade deadline in an organization as a probation period. So once you get through that 90 days, then you kind of own that employee. But prior to that, I mean, following that, they're past those 90 days, then you want to get them to that 20%. So the whole goal, what Welch would do with Crotonville is incentivize to get folks over to that 20%, to get the top 20% of the organization trained and just eating, sleeping, drinking, leadership, always having basically a 24/7 pipeline with his leadership team that can, make decisions. And it was really kind of like the Valhalla for leadership, right? But, so you get these 10%. Every month, there'd be some type of incremental rating system to identify strengths and weaknesses. So imagine having a SWOT on you every day, maybe monthly, maybe, quarterly, but there was always a measurable increment. So you guys are doing review, like I know organizationally, we do our reviews in like November, December, right? So every year you're given a value, you're given a number based on the data that GE collected on you, and you don't want to fall in this 10%. Why? What happens if you fall in that 10%? You're done, you're gone, you're out, right? So, and now you're replenishing that pool out of this 70. So the goal is you want to get as many people on the 70, okay, into that 20. So it's never going to get above 20, but you want to get as many people as you can in there, and you're going to have natural attrition. You're going to have people retiring. You're going to have people dying. You're going to have people quitting. So this number, if you have 1,000 employees, you know that 200 of these employees are your top employees. There's 200 openings to be the best employee. There's 100 openings to be the worst employee. And if you're somewhere in the middle, from different metrics that they present to you in your performance reviews. And Welch's big thing was you should never have to fire somebody after you bring them on board. Because if you can do honest and open appraisals with that person, they might be 11th or 12th or 13% towards the bottom. But if you can continue to work with that person, have open, honest appraisals, you're not going to be the one that fires that person. Because what are they going to realize?
They're not a good fit.
They're not a good fit. So let's say they're that player we got at the trade deadline that really thought, hey, this is a new city for me, playing for the Giants. Their running back's hurt. I have an opportunity to play every game. And then the running back comes back and this person sits on the bench. So they realized what was very, which was a lot of optimism towards their move there. They now realize, this isn't a good fit for me. So they're not a bottom 10%. Their value is a lot higher, but they're going to make that decision on their own to move on. And that's what happens in the way Jack's model was set up, is you would have folks that would decide, I'm heading towards that 10%. So this isn't the right fit for me. And if you can have these transparent conversations and semi-routinely, not sit there and hammer on the person and say, hey, by the way, you suck and the metrics show that you're a bottom 10%er. You just continue to have open-ended conversations with them where they can either step up or step out. And it gives the organization an opportunity to constantly kind of filter through, and that churn ends up being a good thing because you're never going to get this number. This number is always going to be 700 employees if you have 1,000. This number is always going to be 200. This number is always going to be 100. It's who's filling the holes. So that's the 70-20-10 model. And Crotonville builds this leadership. I do want to say it's a lot like the Kaizen model we've talked about a couple of times, but they have so many different divisions at GE. They have the opportunity to spread it out. And it's a pretty unique model. And I just think that as we get into, especially, with a job market right now, where there's going to be more opportunities for a lot of us, because the markets, as it grows, you'll see that skilled labor is kind of getting, you're seeing that 10% maybe grow a little bit. And the opportunities for the 20% are going to be a little more robust, just because you're picking up additional skills, longevity. In kind of Sal's situation, it's the opposite, where he gives 9 years to Walmart and they're like, okay, see you later.
Well, aren't major companies like that nowadays, or been like that?
Well, so
Because I'm thinking like all the big franchises, they're always, they figure, they got that mentality from what I've seen that, you know what, doesn't matter, 9 years or 9 months, they're always thinking somebody's gonna be needing a job and it's cheap labor, I think the way they're taught.
So there's two sides of it, because you should always feel that if you're not the best person to do your job in your organization, then you're in the wrong job. So everybody from my place, from the president on down, is replaceable, right? So I would look at, I harp this, even in 520, it's the most important resource of any organization.
Your labor.
The human resource, right? So somebody who's given you 9 years, and now granted, I'm sure you didn't spend 9 years with this manager, right?
No, she started out like me, as a regular Joe Schmo employee.
So, and worked her way up.
Yeah, but with a lot of,
Politics,
yes,
right? So you do a pest analysis and you see how that affects,
I think
ebbs and flows.
I think there was a lot of greasing, and as we use that Walmart, there's a lot of grease that went behind that, because in a short amount of time, she went from, if I may do a Walmart terminology, cashier to a CSM, which is like a department manager, to like a support, which is an assistant to the assistant, now assistant manager, within a 2-year period, or 2-3 year period. To me, that's quick. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm thinking that there should be like maybe a 5-year plan. Maybe I'm wrong in saying it.
Well, it could, maybe she had experience, maybe she, starting as a cashier, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I got education, and I started as a cashier, well, whatever. But I just think there was a lot of, like you said, politics, greasing the wheel, so to speak,
Yeah.
whatever. And that's how in the 2-year period, I just think that's quick.
So you're what part of that? You're either part of the 70 or 20, you're not part of that 10. And you're leaving. So now somebody from this 10 is either going to step up, or from that 20 is either going to step back, right? So other people see it as a political move, or they'll see it as something that was, maybe not done with the best of intentions. Then you're going to see more attrition out of that. You're going to see more of those 20 say, you know what, this isn't for me. And what happens? Who fills that? You're not going out and hiring these folks. You're filling it internally with people that you didn't deem your top 20%. The only reason they're becoming that top 20% is because talent is leaving. So if you're not reinvesting in your workforce, if you're not entertaining when they have, in Sal's case, when you talk to somebody about leaving, you just sit down and say, let's talk about it. What are your opportunities? Is there, I would think, like if any of us walked into our jobs tomorrow, if I walked in to talk to my dean tomorrow, said, hey, it's been real, but I'm heading out. Or we just talk about Rebecca. Like, she goes and interviews at a dentist's office, right? it, and if she took it to the next step and said, hey, I really had a good interview with my dentist office, I think it's an area I'd like to pursue. And I'm gonna give you my notice. First question is why? Why do you want to give us your notice? Because maybe I'm peeling back, not just the Band-Aid, I'm peeling back the scab to say, whoa, what's going on here? If somebody that we put into a new role last year to take on orientation is now had it with us, what are we doing wrong? So it's not, that's on the organization when somebody wants to leave like that.
Question, like in Rebecca's case, you're still at the college, Rebecca, or she?
Yeah, Rebecca's still at college.
Okay. You think as a top college, like you said, they would try to go above and beyond to solve the problem. Like with my situation, I'm just Joe Schmo in a big corporation. But I think
In your eyes, somebody's gonna have to step up to do your job now. They're gonna have to train somebody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're underselling your value and they're underselling it by not entertaining your offer to say, hey, what can we do?
right.
And then, I don't know, do we share that? So Sal is gonna talk, possibly, what, you want to talk to another manager or?
I want to talk to the store manager and I mean, because right now at the bowling alley, it's a letter of, I think I kind of set it up, and this is where I took something from the course, like a letter of intent. But verbally, not written, that if I come work with you, I'm guaranteed all this. 40 hours insurance, yada, yada, yada. But I don't have to go to you. Because compared to Walmart, it's like comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
The way I was looking at it. If I didn't get what I want, well, hey, transfer me to a different store or give me some position where I can use my knowledge instead of me slinging TVs all day. That's the way I was looking at it. But with Rebecca, I'm thinking, in her situation, I'm thinking that's more like the crystal position of, of what she does. I mean, I think she's really getting gypped.
Thanks, Al. It's still a burnout factory, just like a lot of other places. I mean, we do really special stuff, but I mean, that's kind of the thing with student affairs, where it's like everybody does it because it's really meaningful, not because it pays really well. And although you get a lot of vacation days, if you can't take them, what good are they?
So Rebecca, I guess to Sal's point, if you left next week, right? Dentist office said, we gotta have you, you're awesome. So.
They did say that.
See, now going to the 70-20-10 model, who's taking your job? Do you feel that you're the most qualified person for that position?
I don't think so. I was probably one of the most qualified in the position I was in before. They needed somebody to move into something else, but.
So they put you there because they just like the first name Rebecca? I mean, there's definitely something to how you got that job.
I think there's certain qualities that I have to make it work, but also, yeah, there's a certain level of she's a team player. She'll do whatever we need us to do. Whatever we need her to do. And that's the part that's become a little bit too much, where it's just like, okay, you can't keep piling things on and that kind of thing. So it's like, I think a lot of times they don't recognize their key players. And, when I kind of pump the brakes, it was like, well, why haven't we heard any of this before? It's like, no, you have. You just have wanted to encourage me that I can do it, even though it's more than two people's jobs. So I don't know. I mean, I think some people are having those leadership conversations and other places are still strapped to have enough people, and they can't always plug the holes or prevent people from leaving. They just hope that they'll stay, and if they don't, they'll deal with it once that person leaves. They're not always in a position to throw more money at them to get them to stay.
But remember, with our friends over at Vernon Road, it's not necessarily a money thing, but what about recognition? What about some different types of non-fiscal incentives, things in which that they make your quality of life better, and in turn you step it up as that top 20% employee?
Well, and that was the reason why I didn't go with the dental office, is like their incentives weren't good enough. It wasn't offering like, yeah, it was not as good of an offer, even for less work.
So, Maria, let me ask you from an HR perspective, do you see that often with folks that it's not about the money?
I think, yes, I think everyone always, I mean, the amount of exit interviews I've done, I can certainly say that that may be a factor, but it's more often than not the only factor, and it's more often than not the driving factor, because a lot of times people want career opportunity, they want growth, they want a manager who wants to develop them, and a lot of those things are more important. I mean, maybe at the end of the day, money is more important to them, and that certainly happens, but I think people want a purpose. And especially, I was actually talking to my boss about this the other day. And it kind of ties into this class too, with the sustainability and wanting to be invested in the community, is people want to work at a company where they feel like they're helping someone or helping something or doing something that connects to their community too. So there's so many other factors that I think drive people to want to stay within an organization that are beyond pay specifically.
Do you find that when you lose what you would consider a good person, that there's a scramble, like an internal scramble to fill that?
Yeah, we actually just lost our recruiter, which in today's world is like literally a nightmare. It is. I mean, I think a lot of times, and sort of to Rebecca's point, a lot of companies, if an employee is continuing to work really hard and do the job of more than one person or go above and beyond what they're doing in their role, then instead of wanting to pay and bring in another person and say, all right, this is two people's jobs, so we're going to hire another one, they're like, well, we're getting the work done with this one person. And then when that person leaves, they're totally screwed essentially. So absolutely it happens, and there's ways to avoid it, but you know, typically the bottom line is kind of the driver for a lot of these companies, which is unfortunate.
That's what I would agree is sometimes happening with us, where just about every time somebody leaves, they will consolidate the two positions into one. And then it's like, it either burns out somebody new who comes in not having any idea what they're up against, or it overwhelms people who are already overworked. And now it's like, okay, now you're going to be doing this on top of this. It's like, that was 2 or 3 jobs before. So yeah, that's kind of their MO. So I've been working on pushing back and trying to set boundaries.
I mean,
and
it's tough to set boundaries. Especially when you want to be a good worker. So, and sometimes it does just get to the point where there's nothing you can do but say, I gotta go.
Yeah. So yeah, I figured there is a lot that's meaningful to this job, and that's why I stay. It's not the pay, it's the meaningful stuff and the fringe benefits for sure. So.
And I know we're not in the HR segment of this class, like of the program. You guys, I think you already had that, right?
We did.
So you can see though how it affects, like if Rebecca left, the change is going to be significantly harder to pull off, because you have a seasoned employee that by her own account is a team player that does it all, never says no, right? Sal's been doing it for 9 years. A team player, right? So even replacing that, you're going to find somebody from that 10 to step up into that 70 and maybe get them over to that 20, right? Realistically, those 10s are never going to be 20s, unless they have an epiphany and they were in the wrong place. Maybe they were the wrong part of an organization. They went from, sales to a service or a customer facing, from a customer facing to more of a, manufacturing side. But you need to have those key people in place to make the change. And that's why Welch was so adamant that everybody go to Crotonville, everybody get trained, work on Kaizen, cross-train these individuals. And again, in Rebecca's situation, it's almost an abuse of the cross-training, because, hey, you were good at this, so we're going to put you over here. And a lot of organizations are going to lose people when that happens. So I know we spent a lot of time on, anybody have any more questions on guided involvement, because it's gonna be something that you're gonna probably work into your finals.
I didn't feel like there was actually anything explicit about it. I was only in stradility. But even just like Googling it, I felt like that was not a term that I could find that was, part of strategic planning that anybody would identify for me.
There's some stuff in the other book, nothing significant, but if you just Google Crotonville or Crotonsville, and just watch some of the videos, read some of the articles that are in the Harvard Review. I mean, I think it's such a generic term, guided involvement.
That's what I was wondering is like, so when we say guided involvement, are we talking about like, getting all the, people together to work on things together? Or is the guided involvement that the CEO is involved in guiding the involvement? I guess that's.
Rebecca, if you look at, and I just read this the other day, in all honesty, probably yesterday, but the dynamic strategy making, it does go into a little bit more detail, and
Okay.
it paints a little bit more of a picture. And the other word, but beyond deliberate, was incremental. Eric, I looked at my notes. I didn't completely forget, so
Thank you.
sorry, but it is better about explaining it.
I thought your PowerPoint broke it down very easily. And that's Rebecca, that's what I ended up using, even in my discussion, I kind of went back to that a few times to break it down into she just said both the words, I actually wrote my notes, whatever it is.
Incremental.
Thank you, yeah. But between the incremental and the deliberate, like breaking down the two as to like kind of the approaches and how it all comes together and what like the basis of guided involvement is. Like, I thought the PowerPoint was helpful in kind of walking through that.
I think I totally just missed that because we didn't have class and so I didn't look at it. Thank you.
Rebecca, that'll make it like so much.
The turkey edition. Okay, so I was missing something.
I think I did I posted a video I did from this summer.
I thought it was now, and all of a sudden you said something, I'm like, that makes no sense. Then you're like, this is due August. I'm like, oh, okay. there.
Yeah, it was like, I had just packed, we were leaving for Newport. It was like 1 a.m. and I went to Facebook Live and I recorded it. But it was for this past summer, but it was to kind of give you some perspective on what we're talking about. Okay, so yeah, guided involvement. We're going to focus on the guided involvement that Welch used for GE. So that's really that's probably what you'll benefit the most from. But just know it's when you kind of get the high rollers to get in the weeds and to start helping to kind of like, I really think in Welch's perspective, it was like, if you hang out with these people through osmosis, you're going to start like getting that, you're going to start thinking and acting and kind of, it's like creating these clones, but that's where, again, look at it through his lens.
Well, and even just like customer centric mentality
Yes.
is like, it's just his expectation.
I mean, a lot of people hated the guy, but he really knew how to treat people. He knew how to get the most out of people. And if he couldn't find value, then it might not have been the employee's problem or issue as much as it was the manager's issue that brought that person in, because maybe it wasn't a good fit.
Do you think there were like such high levels of anxiety? Like I wrote that into my comment to someone, like, I just would have been anxious so much at the time.
Because of the scoring that he would do?
Yeah, maybe not. It could just be
Uh,
like-
You're scored all the time though, Kate. It's just, it's less visible, I think, less obvious. People are always kind of judging, right?
Probably right. You're probably right. But like reading about it made me stop and be like, woof, I would not do well. Like, I would just be anxious.
So keep it in perspective now, everything you guys are doing for, how many months do you graduate now? Like
6 months, 5 months.
all right, so everything you've done 15 months prior to in the next 5 months, you've been graded on. You've been put on a scale.
And I get anxious every time.
Okay, and you guys kill it. This is an awesome cohort. You guys work very well as a team. You know, it's pretty cut and dry with me. Here's the instructions. If you do what the instructions are, good job. You know, it's not splitting the atom. We're not doing rocket science here. But you all perform exemplary under the spotlight, and you've done it for the last 15 months. And you do it during the day when you work, you do it, you know, that you're carrying so many things right now. If you had just one thing to worry about, and to keep Jack off your back, and I think because you each hold yourself to a high standard, I don't see that as an issue. Like, I would never, I almost went to sports metaphor, but I won't. But you know,
Use the sportsman.
I actually love them.
Yeah, let's hear it, one time.
Yeah, go for it.
well, I might not ever I might play baseball as a pitcher. I would never look at the scorebook after the game. Didn't care. Didn't interest me in the least. Either felt good or I didn't, right? That was my barometer. It was either yay or nay. But my coach, the community, the newspaper, like the local paper, they'd always publish the box score. And at the end of the day, our team could have played like total garbage. And remember, I don't look at the book, and I could have felt good and say, like, you know what, I was throwing the ball well, I felt good. Yeah, they hit me a little bit, but I felt good. But at the end of the game, when that box score goes into the newspaper, there's only one player, one person on that field that has a W put next to their name, and there's one person on that field that has an L put next to their name. Right? Not the coach, not the person that struck out 4 times, not the person that hit 4 grand slams. They pick a pitcher to do that. So they affix the W or the L. So I never would look and say, oh, that's how I did. I wouldn't analyze, believe it or not, I wouldn't analyze my stats and say, I had, 4 walks and 5 strikeouts, and never. But other people do that for me. So when you're in a position like that, you just put your head down and work and do what you're supposed to do. Those numbers are going to take care of themselves. And that data will create the ultimate identity of who you are. Numbers don't lie, stats don't lie, right? So that's why I think it might be culture shock for some of us to say, wait, he's judging me. I can't, that's not right. I can't do that. But when you see the playing field, not a sports metaphor, when you see the playing field and you see how that 70, 20, 10 breakdown is, it should be something that you're striving for, because nobody's, putting a mask on you and driving you somewhere and putting you in front of a computer in a classroom every Wednesday night and say, okay, you have class tonight. You're doing this on your own. So you're already looking to better yourselves. That's what that 10% are. Either they're a bad fit, a bad hire, but so that 70% is a nice big pool to swim around in until you can figure out what your purpose is. Now, in Sal's case, going back to that, so maybe this other store manager he talks to says, gee, Sal, that's my bad. We really want to keep a person like you around. And, you're going to get your degree in 5 months, and let's look at opportunities like this for you. That would be very refreshing, and Sal would probably be happy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just that, how can I put it? I just don't feel like I don't want to waste what I've learned in a job where I can't progress.
Well, something you might, so I don't know if you guys heard Sal, but he doesn't want to waste what he learned in a job that might not have a great ending to it, right? Is he forever going to be a manager at a Walmart store? Now, there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, it's one of the largest retailers in the world, but also there's different, you could do logistics, you could go into different areas of the organization, not necessarily the retail component.
Right, but also what I'm thinking now is what you said earlier, the way the kind of the market is, everybody's hiring, maybe this is a plus. Maybe it is for the better, I don't know.
Well, it is definitely a plus, like both with Rebecca and with Sal, when you can leverage that opportunity now. So that's something that they can't take away from you.
Because like I was telling Joanna, and I showed her, like, I'm on Indeed. I every once in a while I go on there and just search for them. And I saw a job posting for a credit union for an administrative assistant. Something, and it's just a basic type file, mail, whatever. And their pay rate, what they're offering, is a huge one. It's like from 21 to 31 dollars an hour for an admin. And that kind of shocked me a little bit because I'm thinking either they're desperate or maybe my resume is that good. I don't know. But for a credit unit and for a position as an admin, it's staggering.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, plus with also the COVID stuff, they're probably saying, will this kid take a chance and come on over if we entice him with the money, you know? I don't know how to take that.
I mean, it's working from a big company to a small company, you know, that's one
But
of the things.
it's amazing though, but I'm looking at the pay rate, like, and it's just like, from a small company, that's still like, that's not bad. And if they can afford that, they must be doing something in their business, or maybe business strategic plan that they can afford that.
No.
Yeah, that too, but it's just something.
You gotta weigh what you want though. You know what I mean? Like you have to weigh your options. Like if you want growth, then you have to look and see like, maybe it is a year or two at the bowling alley and then you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have to kind of look and see what it is that you want over the next, like, make yourself a little like personal strategic plan.
And which I kind of did, but I'm going more like not like long-term, but more like short into long, if you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Financially.
Yeah, maybe getting out of Walmart is the short and then you figure out the long,
Good point.
maybe. I
Because
don't know. Don't go by me.
right now, I still got the post office, I got that, that's gonna be the long term, because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm thinking of Rebecca right about now, it's the bennies, it's the pay,
Mhm.
and it's the support system between management, union, and all that stuff. So I don't know, it's kind of.
So like what Kate was saying too, that's, and Rebecca, pay attention here, because I think if you build your own strategic plan and you go from being a generalist to say, hey, this is it, I'll give you guys 2 years of new student orientation, and this is what I want to do after that. You've got a position of leverage where you can call your shots. They need you more than you need them. And at that point in time, you'll have your degree. That, you know, they've certainly, you know, as an organization, they value that. Obviously, they're in higher ed, but by putting your own strategic plan together, giving yourself those goals and putting a timeline in place, it's going to prevent the employer from taking advantage of you, because, you know, you're just going to go to the next fire. Instead of being proactive, everything will be reactive. So, but excellent. So you haven't paying attention, Kate.
I do.
I'm very honored.
Sometimes.
I'm honored.
Extra 10 points on the fine.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna catch up in my board here. I want to talk about. Okay, so as far as our week 5 overview, this is my robotic read through of my week 5 overview. So we'll learn to implement change, monitor, and modify in order to successfully deploy the strategic plan. We will learn how to recognize challenges and misaligned behaviors and to implement corrective actions to reduce issues. So at the end of this week, this is what you should have in your emotional checkbook as far as outcomes, all right? You should be able to diagnose the readiness level of the people, the process, and the symptoms to implement that change, right? So that's what we're doing right now. We're talking about taking the pulse, understanding big picture, 70, 20, 10. Do we have the right people? Maybe it's not the right bus, but it's the right terminal, okay? Those are the things that you're going to need to figure out. You're going to design a culture that supports innovation, open communication, employee engagement, ethical decision-making, and strategic planning. That second sentence is extremely important as you're looking to put your strategies together. for our friends over at Vernon Road. This is the portfolio paper coming up this week. This is the two strategy. We'll read about that in a sec, but your learning outcomes are going to tie into that of how you did your internal and external analysis, kind of looked at your SWOT, maybe your 4D, your PEST, and now you're going to come up with a couple of strategies individually. And then as a team, you're going to start putting those together to come up with your, to help to put a little meat on your finals bone. So your learning outcomes, after reading the text and viewing the lecture notes and additional materials, students will be able to effectively identify actions and behaviors that may inhibit successful changes. What is that? How do you paraphrase that? What's something that you would look for?
Why people resist change?
Yep, we're gonna look for the Richards, we're gonna look for the Jeffs, we're gonna look for all the naysayers, and you wanna then get in their head and figure out why. Right, why are they doing that? And then that's how, those are the folks that you're gonna need to kind of dance around when you're putting your change together. Everybody good on our week 5? All right, and I'm just gonna reread our portfolio piece to kind of give you a little more emphasis on that. So identify 2 strategies with a plan for each strategy to achieve the key strategic goal. In addition to the conclusions derived from the overall environmental analysis, that's our internal and external, right? And a review of the income statement included in the project description, consider the following steps in describing the plan you will design to implement each strategy. You want to research what other companies currently are doing and identify best practices for your topic. Remember, go to the very last page of that final doc that we handed out that we have from week 1, and that's got a link to some other organizations there. Based on your research, explain how your plan would work. So this example is rewards and recognition. We talked about it kind of a little bit earlier about it's not all about the money, but what are some things that you can do? What would your implementation plan be? And you got to get wicked specific on this. So you're going to look at, I'm going to roll this out as a pilot with 7 employees. We're going to run it from March to June. And we're going to take the data that we collect from March to June, and we're going to see if we can extrapolate it out. And so you really want to get in the weeds that far, okay? Everybody good on that? Okay.
Kind of. I feel like some of that is just like, I don't know, more business than maybe we've studied. Am I the only person that feels that way now, like looking at income statements and that kind of stuff?
I'm going to mute Rebecca now. No, I'm just no, and here's what I'll say to that, because no, that question has come up before, because then I think I even asked, maybe it was in the last cohort, because not everybody's a business major, right? So that's why I put that breakdown of the income statement, but this is blue sky, okay? You have an opportunity to make any recommendation you want, and you don't necessarily have to be, like Rupert Murdoch. You can be somebody, you can make a decision. And if you can justify that decision and defend your hypothesis, you're golden. So you don't have to tell me that, because if I run these machines an extra shift and I can yield another, 200 yards of fabric a day, which is going to gross us another, $25,000 a year, you don't have to put into consideration that by running those machines an extra 12 hours a day, that the wear and tear is probably going to put some of these machines either in disrepair or in a service routine that's going to kind of take away from the 25 grand you're getting. We don't have to get that far in the weeds if you guys are following. You can just say, this is my plan, this is what I would like to do, and this is how I want to roll it out. At the end of the day, what's our goal?
30%.
In what?
Sales.
We're not looking at bottom line, we're looking at 30% sales growth. That's an easy goal not an easy goal to attain, but it's an easy way to look at things and say, great, we're gonna make a decision if they can get us 30% of an increase in sales.
It like leaves you enough broadness.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have another question.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No problem.
So I guess so then like we're just talking about a feel good factor when it comes to sustainability. Our cost savings don't get to contribute to 30%. It has to be sales, not
Correct.
growth.
No, we're focusing on sales.
Okay.
Well, what are the costs of help the sales?
Well,
I mean, because without sales, without the cost, you don't have to sell. I'm just, 'cause I got a little bit, like an associate's in account, so I was always taught to get your increase in sales, you have to factor in the cost per se.
you do, you have your materials costs that you have to factor in there, your labor costs you have to factor in there, right? But you're going to do enough quote unquote accounting to get yourself to show how you can net a 30% growth. And again, I'm not asking you to say that if I lay off 6 people, I can then throw that money into manufacturing, and that manufacturing will yield me another, 200 yards a week, which will give me another 100,000 yards a year, which will make me X amount of dollars. So you want to extrapolate out, but don't look at it from a basic income statement. We're not looking at how much more labor it's going to cost. You can factor that in. You can say, I'm going to need to bring on 1 more person, things like that, but you don't have to really go crazy. I want you to get creative and think of ways in which, as a consultant, you can bring that money. You can get that 30% in. That's all you're really doing. Because just look at Jerry. What was Jerry's suggestion? Come on.
If it was more like the change
You wanted to get, sorry.
ownership, so can improve the relationship with employees and have a better like motivation to work and do better.
Exactly. So the high roller consultant that launched Coca-Cola in Europe, his suggestion was unload Jeff, unload Richard. Because he was looking at it from an organic standpoint of how losing that was going to organically improve the situation. We're not reinventing anything. So Rebecca, you don't have to get in the weeds from an accounting perspective.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions on that?
No, I just have a statement.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I thought I would never say this, but I really would rather be doing Starbucks and Tivana right now.
Oh, no.
You just broke his heart, Cynthia.
I don't, why do you not like these guys so much?
They're outdated.
So you're gonna say that Eric's old right
I
now?
love it.
I
think
know,
that's
right?
old.
Oh,
No,
my God.
seriously, I really, I think I said this before, this is our reverse engineering program. This is where we find a way to completely do the wrong thing and we're able to fix it. So it's kind of a feel good. And I hope you have that epiphany as you're working on your final.
Maybe we can modernize it by making some lace crop tops or something, Cynthia.
As I was telling Anna and Stephen in our meeting, like the only lace is in wedding gowns and prom dresses. And by the way, Sal, or I'm sorry, Eric, I will still feel good at the end of the presentation when this is all done with, because it's called vodka. Lots of it.
I knew somehow she'd incorporate vodka into this.
I'm telling you, because this here is causing me to drink. I'm just going to be honest. I have been pretty good. I have been like, now that has increased. By the way, I found the new vodka, but we'll talk about that later.
Ooh, put it in the store.
Cynthia, you should see if Vernon Road can incorporate new products like alcohol distribution into they have transportation, right? They got trucks, they get delivery people. It's, maybe
Or better yet, vodka infused lace. There we go.
that's a new idea, but there's got to
And
be a
it
market.
dissolves. There we go. Yes. Yes.
Do we need
Okay.
to add an aisle to Maria's Fine Wines
We
to carry that vodka line now?
We do.
Yes, I think so.
Bleach flavored vodka.
You only need one
Just
hit.
kidding. If kids will eat Tide Pods, they'll go for this.
Okay, so I don't want to be the old man in the room, but right, what was it like? Like I see, I don't know, these memes all over the place. When I was a kid, they taught us how to change spark plugs, they didn't warn us not to drink the battery fluid, you know? It's like, it's so like, the society we're in is like so litigious and then just, you know, they don't want to really assume ownership, but I don't know, I'm a pretty open-minded person. I just don't know if a vodka-laced bleach dye would be a big mover, you know? Unless you can get the vapors, right? Maybe you make masks, make the vodka-laced masks so you can get a buzz when you're taking the class.
Cynthia's writing all this down. She's
I
like,
was just gonna say the same thing,
I
Maria.
forget these. Yes.
I know, I'm typing it now, like in my little work notes, like, ideas.
No. So that's what I see. So Cynthia, that's what I like. Like, we have the option here, which we really didn't have so much with Starbucks, because we're talking like global cash. We're talking like 460 million bucks, right? So you can come up and, as we were talking about, you got trucks, you've got a factory, you've got a workforce. What can you sell in that region? What can you do? If nobody's buying lace right then and there, you identified a key problem. There's one other lace and dyeing manufacturer in the neighborhood with these folks, right? So there's your opportunity. But I think that it is that blue sky where you can get as creative as you want, maybe not so much with, with vodka lace clothing, but think you can show, and again, I not to downplay what we're doing here, right? But in a matter of 7 weeks, you're going to come up with better ideas than people that invested millions of dollars into an organization could have ever thought of coming up with. You're going to come up with leadership strategies, you're going to come up with product development, you're going to come up with ways in which to implement a change agent that would have their head spinning, because all they walked in the door every morning was thinking, how much money am I going to make today? What do I need to do to meet this bottom line? How much do I have to make so I don't have to send my Jag back? So I don't know. You didn't break my heart, Cynthia, but I'll tell you, it is, I just look at, it's almost like just watching like Larry the Cable Guy or something, where it's just like, that there's just a punchline at the end, where how somebody can be like so screwed up, but yet be so successful. And I don't know what other business they ran like successfully, but anyway. All right, fortunately, you can't see the tears streaming down my cheek because I have my mask on, but so any other questions now on our big portfolio paper? Everybody good? You guys think you're in a good spot?
I think, you can always maybe hear from me, but I think so.
All right, so I'm gonna jump up. This is kind of what we were doing, the status check. So,
Are you doing the question thing yet? I just really need to use the link.
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
no problem.
Thank you.
We're a couple slides away from that. I'll talk wicked slow. So, everybody good on their internal, external summaries, right? We've taken the temperature. We know what the environment is, right? We good on that, everybody?
Oh, did I scare him off that bad?
I know Sal just like evacuated the room here.
Smoke if you got him.
I'll do my non-scientific survey. So who likes Starbucks better than Vernon Road for a case study? Show of hands. Okay, so it's 2 and 2 on the screen. Sal, where are you?
I'm on the fence.
Sal's on the fence.
Anna's hand is raised too, you just can't see it.
Oh,
I feel like the difference, and I see your point, Cynthia, because with the Starbucks stuff, I feel like it was easier to sort of mentally figure out some ideas or where things stood or what was happening at the time and understanding the product and everything like that. With this, there's so much. I still am not 100% sure of the year. I don't know.
I think
you
it's
know,
a little bit more relevant to our everyday lives, where
But
like we're
I
just
also
more
feel like-
familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a lot more opportunity in this one to actually think of some really creative things because they basically did nothing. So anything that we decide on is going to be a good idea. Whereas Starbucks, it was a lot more like you had to be very. That's
Well, I guess for me, my struggle is like, you know, I'm so black and white. I don't like that gray area. And so my mindset is like, I don't know the laws and rules to England, and do they have unions, and do they have this? And so it's like, I'm thinking of all those factors, and I'm like, I'm in the US. So I guess for me, it's digging deeper into trying to kind of understand the background and the history of just how things are over there, I guess, like how businesses are ran, the do's and don'ts, things like that. So I guess for me, like, I guess maybe I'm thinking too deep into it, and I tend to do that. I know that. And maybe that's what my problem is that I'm like thinking too deep. And that's, like I said, that's that black and white side of me. And that's the part that's like driving me crazy. And like you said, again, and that's why I said it's like there's no relevance. Like I said, they're so outdated. And I have to admit, if I listen to another one of their accents again, it's going to drive me crazy. I only like the English accent on 007.
I love British accents.
Only on 007. That's it. But and I think that's, go ahead.
Cynthia, what I was gonna say, I think what's driving me crazy is I'm good until Eric keeps saying that 30% sales increase, right? Because like for Starbucks, we didn't answer that. Like we sort of said, this is what they did wrong. This is what we would do different. So every time when Eric says that 30% sales increase, my brain starts to stop a little bit. And it's not bad, right? And it's science. So I have to keep, I feel like Eric's in my head too. It's like, Hannah, this is a science. Like this is the science. And so if you can prove it, we're okay. But I wish you would stop saying this 30% in sales increase, because otherwise I'm good.
How about 20?
Because like the
How
thing
about
about
no
it is,
increase? We're just gonna do it, and they're gonna love it, and they're gonna be successful.
and well, the funny part is like, just like Rebecca's like, what about cost savings? Because me, I was all in cost savings. I was like, yes, 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 yes. And then Eric just killed my dream when he was like, no. I was like, I got hard cost savings, I got soft cost savings, and he just killed my high. I don't.
That's why
she has to drink.
Mama thing.
I listen, you can factor that stuff in, but from a manufacturing side, your job really is to get 30% more sales, right? So so that might mean to the good folks over at, let's say Sal goes to work in their accounting department, right? So that might mean Sal knows we only need to make 18%. But if we can get 30% worth of sales, I can make it work on my end because I'm gonna have all the back end stuff taken care of with that other 12%. So that 30% is that buffer. You need that new business coming through the door, and then you can make it work. That doesn't necessarily mean that 30% means you're gonna net 30% more cash at the end of the year, at the end of that third year. That means operationally, that's the number you need to succeed. So you don't have to factor in all your back end costs. You can do that if you want, but it's tougher to meet that 30% when you're pulling all that back end into it. So get creative, pie in the sky, have fun with it. It's your opportunity to save an organization that nobody else is really, outside of Jerry, has cared to do. You're telling me that there's people that are on that shop floor of 100 people, they didn't have an idea to say, hey, if you guys tried this, you heard some people talk about employee incentives, time off, things like that. So just just focus on your 30% goal for sales. That's why it's written that specifically. Let the bean counters worry about it on the other end, right? Let the Sal's of the world figure out, the profits and loss. That's not up to us. We just want to bring in more business.
And also cheat the government out of which they share.
Yeah. So Sal's already got us being audited by the FBI because he's going to swindle some of that cash. So might want to make it 32% cover his bail.
Exactly.
So are we good on that? You guys clear? You get the 30% we just want to see a sales increase in 30%. Let's let everybody else worry about the back end stuff. Everybody got a pretty good handle on their 2 strategies. You don't have to share them in public. I know it's very proprietary, but and each of your papers that you submit, you shouldn't have your team shouldn't have all the same. As you're writing this portfolio paper, your team technically exists, but it doesn't. This portfolio paper is a representation of your thoughts. So let's say, like if 3 of you have 6 different ideas, when you get to your final, you're going to come down to what you think is, your best 2, right? So that means 4 good ideas are off the table, but you're just bringing kind of like you're melding your ideas together. Everybody got that? We good on that? I'll show the home audience. I even highlighted that in my notes. 30% sales growth, 3 years. That's all we want.
That was for you, Cynthia and Hannah.
All right, so I'm gonna recap on that because I think that's my next slide. Doing my status check. As a team, is it? Yeah, okay, so as a team, you must now collaborate and formulate a single strategic plan for VR, which answers the following questions. What are the key insights about the internal, external environment? What's your key goal? What's your overall strategic direction? Guys, this is the final. Okay, this isn't the portfolio paper. What are the key strategies and priorities? How will you implement our strategies, including costs, benefits, timing? That's where we're going to lay it all out. Give ourselves like a pilot period, a small window, a way in which we can measure it. How will you ensure that changes are effectively implemented? How will we ensure that changes are effectively implemented? Which one way we can do that? Right, we're gonna follow up.
Yeah, status reports, performance reviews.
Okay, exactly.
Our sales goes up 30%.
That's the easy one. What will the impact of the company's culture be once your plan's implemented? So again, blue sky. We really didn't have that luxury with Starbucks and Tivana because it was like we knew what happened. We knew all the Tivanas closed. But having this, and look, we know that this place didn't end well, but this is our opportunity to deal hypothetically with a situation. And if you look at what some of these other organizations have done that are in the fabric industry, and you can see some of the sustainability things that they've built, it's pretty cool. I mean, from an ecological perspective of how cleaner they've gotten and how conscious they are. I mean, there's really, we maybe talked about it, or maybe it was in the notes last week, but, or no, I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago. that fourth R, being responsible. So you want to leave the place in better condition than when you found it. That we have that opportunity to do with these clowns at Vernon Road. So we didn't have that opportunity at Starbucks. So from a sustainability standpoint, I don't want to say it's apples and oranges, because Starbucks means and to sustain itself was by just pouring more money onto a problem. Where, you know, Richard and his father didn't have that opportunity. So, or maybe they did, we don't know, but they certainly didn't. They didn't throw any more cash than they had to into it.
Eric, can I ask a question and then I'll be done with questions for the night because I've asked.
Like an unlimited question pass, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we skipped last week, so just like, yeah, they're spilling over. And I apologize if this is in the syllabus. What is the fourth paper that we're writing? Because I feel like we're getting to the end here, and like if we're talking about the strategic plan at this point, then what is the fourth paper on?
Fourth paper is why does Starbucks suck? So it's like a thesis on, no, the fourth paper is your personal experience in putting a strategic plan together. So, I mean, if this was an orchestra or if this was a concert, right? Let's say I'm at Metallica, my favorite band, and they play, they'll play Creeping Death, right? That's not their last song, but that's like my favorite song. So for me, the concert hits crescendo at Creeping Death, and whatever they play after that's gravy. So this third paper that you're writing, that's your Creeping Death. That's the one song that you want to hear at the concert. And then you're going to tie it into a personal experience in your fourth paper. But your third paper is going to show that you're measurably competent, that you understand the content of the course and change agents. And the fourth paper again ties into how it affects you personally, which you're going to probably use as you write your, I think I'm not sure if Sandy's going to switch it up at all, but you kind of summarize at the end of the program, ways in which that you don't have to, it's certainly not a portfolio, but it's just,
Is this more of a reflection and we'll use personal pronouns than it is?
correct, where you were, where you are type thing. So, but that third paper is the biggie. The fourth paper is kind of your own personal. This is how I've done it before, and this is how I've used it. It's just to show that you have a grasp on putting together a strategic plan. Is that good? Any other questions? All right, so let's look at leading, changing, following up. So the 3 steps to drive change. Now, if you have your screen on at home, I won't spin it. I'm not sure how well you would see it. The blue, I'm kind of on an angle here. See if I can shift this. If anybody gets motion sickness, hold on.
Eric, I do like this PowerPoint format better.
Blue background.
Yeah. Just a nice, very simple, clean look.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the, well, I'm just going to change my plug. Like, talked about the different format, like, so when they created the Canvas shell, they took a lot of different PowerPoints and reformatted them. And I personally like this one too. It's cleaner, the font is easier to read, but I went and reformatted most of them where they would still fit on the page. So not for nothing, but the next person that gets 650 will have this as their standard template. So let me just plug in here. Thank you for noticing, Maria.
I'm all about detail.
You would think in like a high-tech classroom, we'd have more than like 3 outlets, and they were jammed in the wall. I feel like there should be like that hold music right now while
I
I'm
was
setting
just
this up.
gonna say, it comes out of the wall.
There we go. Okay, so we're gonna get into the styles now coming up before we have our little break or our little exercise. So we're talking about senior level capabilities that can drive effective strategic management. That's our 20. Those are our 20% in Jack Welch's world, right? Those are the folks, those are the heavy hitters, right? So some of the common traits: lead by example, be engaged, be active. I mean, I'm sure we can all envision folks that have this type of leadership skill. Why is it important to have the ability to empower people? What's the one thing you need? If I went around, okay, we'll go back to our 70-20-10. If I went to my 20s, right? And said, hey, how's your department look? Oh, it's looking, it's looking okay. Here's the numbers, this and that. They're kind of low, I'm missing some of this. If I sat there and said, all right, well then this is what we have to do. How am I helping the situation? I'm not eliciting an opinion, I'm just dictating. So it's not, collectively, it's not, we might fix the problem, but it's just going to be, again, the Band-Aid where it's going to happen again. You have to empower your folks to get in the trenches and to make those things happen.
And the ownership component.
Absolutely. We didn't see that with Vernon Road. And Cynthia, we didn't see it with Starbucks either, right? Because remember the data scientist was telling Schultz, nah, you probably don't want to do this. And they did it anyway, because ego gets in the way. Engaged and active, you're on the floor, you're with the folks, you're in the trenches, but you're not there from a coaching perspective. You're there from a more of a kind of solidarity perspective. When we saw that with Vernon Road, it was almost, I would say active, I wouldn't say engaged, because they were in crisis mode. Called the team together, we're gonna have layoffs, right? That's not when you get engaged. You get engaged to say, hey, guys, we really got to step it up if we're, this is what we're going to have to look to do. Maybe we're going to add another shift. Can I get some ideas? Because we're looking at a break-even point here. So they didn't become engaged. They got active when they had to. And their activity really wasn't good. Their activity was to furlough people or to redundancy, a group, well, what would the plural of that be? Redundancies?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
So anyway, your 3 steps with the characteristics of these folks right here: you're leading, you're changing, and you're following up. Because if you just lead and change and you don't follow up, and you don't do those exit interviews like Maria does hundreds of, and you don't do those little incremental checks, you're not going to know if the change is working, and then you can't prove your hypothesis, which means you've got to start over. So it's not super like in depth. It's just it's a lot of common sense here, where you look at the characteristics. And I don't know if you've ever done this, and I know we did it. I did it once in 520, but if you get a chance, create your own personal Rushmore, right? Everybody know what Rushmore is, right? So you put the 4 people on Rushmore that got you to where you are. And it kind of it's pretty introspective where you have to kind of look back and see like where you were at one point and how that got you to the next point. And we like, maybe you'll see them transitionally or incrementally. And your timeline can really make sense of where you are and who you are. Like, I think my Rushmore is my high school hockey coach, my high school hockey coach, one of my best friends growing up, they own the Belize Auto Group, and Mark Scheinberg, the president here. And without those 4 people, I'm not where I am. And that I cannibalized in a good way from each of those folks. So it really helps me when I'm looking to build on certain strengths and kind of counter weaknesses. I do my own internal SWOT analysis, and you kind of say, look, I need a little more Coach Whalen today, or I need a little less, Dad, stuff like that. And it really helps you keep everything in perspective, because we're not as good as Jack Welch is or was. Jack Welch took a little bit of everybody and just kind of like, kind of morphed into the personality he became by taking bits and pieces along the way. So just do that as kind of an internal exercise to figure out where you are, why you're here, and who got you here. Because even the greatest leaders in the world follow other people. So that they develop these skills based on people they've watched, admired. And, you go back to Aristotle and Plato, and they're I guess a little more ambiguous because they didn't have the audience that some of the other folks might have had. But again, it's a cool exercise because you'll see that most everybody that you brought into your circle to make your Rushmore have the same characteristics. So you kind of lean on different aspects of these characteristics to build your own personal style. That's probably another piece of maybe 680. I can't remember the course you're going to end up taking, but you're going to have to do kind of that little self-assessment, where you were, where you are type thing. Okay, this is where we're going to do our little exercise here. And I did warn you, we cannot duplicate answers, all right? So each student gives a viewpoint on why do people resist change? So describe 3 major obstacles to change and identify strategies to deal with them. So because we have more than 3 people in our class, we're going to go around and everybody's going to give us a change. I mean, a reason why people resist change. So there's definitely more than 9. So you don't have to worry about, really having to stretch for an answer here. All right, so who wants to go first?
Me.
All right, Jonna, go ahead.
They feel comfortable in the position they are. In terms of they don't wanna like improve themselves, like they're just comfortable in the position.
Okay, comfortability, perfect. I'm gonna bring this over so you guys can see it.
You want us to like read how we thought about this?
All right, Sal's next. So you know what? I'm gonna call on you guys.
I'm thinking consistency,
So why consistency?
because I think once you get into a routine, you don't have to think about it. It just reacts naturally.
No thought required. All right, Marie, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I didn't know if that was going to work. People are not necessarily in touch with their capabilities. I feel like every time a change happens for me, I'm always like, I won't be able to do that. I'm not talented enough. I'm not good enough, whatever. So I think a lot of people have that type of mindset.
Would you say, would that be self-doubt?
You're a failure.
Self-doubt or
Competency.
imposter syndrome, kind of.
Ooh.
Maria, you stole mine.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Extra points from Sandy for using imposter syndrome. All right, great. Kate, you got one?
I was just gonna say fear. In the
Fear.
sense that just not knowing what the change will bring, how the change impacts them, how the change impacts the company.
Excellent. All right, who's up next?
I'll go. I just lost it. Poor communication. So like if the change isn't communicated well. So kind of like with your sports analogy of that guy where it's like, it'd be one thing if he had broken the news to his team first, but created a lot more issues with the change.
Extra points for working that Notre Dame angle. Hannah, what do you got?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
Yeah. Right. So if my buddies are against it or my buddy, I'm gonna be like, oh, I want to be with them. So, or if I have a supervisor who's against the change, do I follow that supervisor because I need to keep my position?
Excellent. Cynthia, go ahead.
Lack of motivation.
What's a good one?
Like you have no motivation to do the report at the end of the semester on Vernon Road because you are a person that likes the Starbucks Tivana case study.
Well, not a better example. I mean, with this one, I have to, so that's the motivation. But it's more so like, so when I say like for me, like with anything of trying something new, it's like, why do I really want to do this? What's the benefits of it? What's the rewards of it besides, okay, yeah, I may feel better or whatever else, but do I go out walking in the morning in the cold? And also obstacles, right? There's always some reason as why not, in our own head. But yeah, lack of motivation.
I like it. I don't like no motivation. I just like the answer. Okay, Nan, it's all you.
The feeling of uncertainty. You don't know if the change is going to be good or bad at the end of the day.
Uncertain. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Carolyn, Leash. I'm saying no. I get everybody right. Yeah. Okay. So we have got comfortability, consistency, imposter syndrome, fear, poor communications, peer pressure, no motivation, and uncertainty. All bona fide, legitimate concerns. Okay. So what we want to do is we're going to go down each one of these and we're going to pick up how do we counter that? How do I say to Hannah, it doesn't matter what your friends are doing, your colleagues, this is the future. This is the way we have to go. So we're going to take examples like that and we're going to kind of how we would have this conversation with somebody to help get the change moved to the next level. We're not necessarily looking to say, okay, once we've convinced this person that they're going to be comfortable, then change hits. No, we're not going to do that. We want to come up with ways in which we can have conversations and kind of pick up some buzzwords, ways in which to get folks to drink the proverbial Kool-Aid, right? Isn't that what we want to get them on board? And remember, our 70-20-10, we got the 20, but it's a 70 that we're trying to get over to this side. All right, we want to get the lion's share. We want to get the champions to basically bring over the folks that are kind of on the fence. All right. All right. How would I talk to a person that was just in a really good spot at the organization? Let's do a hypothetical situation. We got a person that's 60 years old, right? They're in total cruise control. They've been with the organization for 25 years. They got 5 years left, hopefully, that they can go out and start getting their social security, retire down to Florida, right? They're very comfortable. What do I say to that person to say, hey, guess what? We got something coming down the pike you're gonna love. Well, how do I have that conversation?
Well, I think with probably anything, you have to figure out what kind of their big motivator is. So maybe if it's retirement, which is my motivator as well, can't wait for that. You can be like, well, this, depending on what the opportunity is, this could put you in a good position to make a little bit more money. Maybe you could retire early. Maybe this could allow you to, I don't know, take on a project that could help you think a little bit more and generate ideas before you leave. I guess it all depends on what their kind of big motivation is and what you know about them and the change.
And I think like bringing honesty to that conversation, because if you're working with somebody who, like you're saying, has maybe been around for a while or is nearing the end of what they would call their career, really like just having that honest conversation. Like, you don't, this is not, in my vision of this conversation, this is not someone that you're like adding all that fluff or trying to like be that extra cheerleader, like just kind of give it to them how it is.
Kind of need that, like that motivational speaker kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now to counter what Kate said, right? And I'm again, this is hypothetical, but I am all about transparency. I think you don't it's business, it's not personal. This is the way it's happening, right? So I have that honest conversation with that individual, like Kate said, like, hey, you know what? This might not be for you. I need you as a champion right now, but I don't really know how it's going to affect you, but I'd have that honest conversation. But what if now corporate comes down, let's say they're having this conversation and it's a Walmart and they're having this conversation with the manager, right? And the district manager's instructions are get everybody on board. So is that conversation that I'm having with this person honest?
No.
Oh, see.
Well, it could
Yeah, I
be.
think it depends how. I think sometimes like the honest conversation, like, I think there's a way of being honest and still trying to like, it's like kind of to like what Maria was saying about like, what's the motivator or what, like almost that question of like, why wouldn't you get on board? Like, yes, you're comfortable. Yes, you love what you do, but what is holding you back from this change? And ask, so that's honest, but it's asking those, like digging a little bit deeper into like having them answer.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
If I might, take the devil's advocate, like you said, Walmart DM. The DM may say, okay, I'm the DM, you're the store manager. I'm going to get everybody on board. You as a store manager got no choice because that's going to affect your bonus at the end of the year. And you're going to try to say, okay, guys, we're doing it no matter what, either blank or get off the pot.
So now I'm gonna come back at you. You can take that approach, but did you get them on board? Like, are they actually on board?
Because, yeah, but hang on a second, but they then to counter that,
Yeah.
you don't like it, get out, I can get somebody that's desperate for a job, that's one of the brown nose to do it, get done, and make me look good in front of the DM.
Okay, so that's
There was a heated
valid.
debate.
That's valid. I know. I was gonna run out to my truck, and get my striped shirt. No, but here's a question that I'll ask. Let's shift gears for 1 second, because remember I talked about seeing the forest through the trees, right? So we're looking at the person in front of us to have that conversation as the tree. We don't see the forest beyond it, because no matter what we say to that person, they're gonna go home and talk to their spouse and say, these clowns are trying to get me to change my mind. We're still going to Boca Vista in 5 years and we're out of here, right? So no matter what we say and how we sugarcoat it, and however slimy I might feel at the end of the day having that conversation, that person's mind is already made up. So we're either going to be on board or not on board. So we have to learn how to deal with the folks that aren't going to be on board. And remember, you can disagree with me all day long, but we're having these one-on-ones, but when we get out, unified front, we deliver that message as a unified front, whether you like it or not. So I want to shift just a hair now, because this is affecting a lot of people, right? And it kind of, let's say that now that at Kate's company, that they need on December 6th to have everybody either vaccinated or with a mask on, okay? And that's happening with us at Goodwin. So I have some really good employees that are like, I'm not getting vaccinated. And I'm gonna have to spend 2 to 3 hours a week, every week, getting tested to show you that I'm clean. So now, let's say it's Kate's organization. And Sal's like, I'm not getting the shot. So what do we do?
Real life.
Because this is
Yeah,
literally,
can I tell you, for all the like difficult conversations, I haven't had to have this one, but in talking to other colleagues, because our company's the same way right now. This is one that like, I would love someone to answer, like talk through this. This one has stumped me a little bit.
how about our HR professional? Have this conversation popped up, Maria?
Yeah, well, we had to do it at the university that I worked at, and I went through that entire process and then left to go to a new company, and now we're talking about doing it there. And I was like, I already did this. I don't want to do this again. But it is one of those things where once the leadership made the decision to say everyone has to get vaccinated or you don't have a job, unless you have a religious or a medical exemption, you don't have a job. And we gave people 2.5, 3, something, maybe a little bit more months to say, we're giving you time. You have to at least have started the process or whatever it is. I can't remember when we started, but and we kept telling the leadership team, we're like, you can't make this rule. And then at the end of the day say, oh, these people that we really like didn't do it, so we're just going to let them stay. We have to draw this line in the sand. And at the end, I think by the time the deadline came up, I think that my friend who still works there said only 3 people left because of this out of 1,300.
Well, so here's like, I
But it
guess,
was not fun.
but a dilemma to that. Okay, so let's go back. Let's say this is happening at Walmart, right? And there is probably, I don't know, if you look at, because they're nationally, so if they went, you look at your stores down in, Florida and Alabama and, like kind of right along, kind of like the southeastern coast towards the Midwest a little bit, right? So they can make the argument, look, our infection rate's lower. Why do we have to follow suit with something that's happening up in Massachusetts or Connecticut? So the easiest way to lose all credibility when you're issuing this is say, look, I don't really care if you get a vaccination or not, but the boss says you have to get it, right? So when you pass ownership like that on, you just become so weak because you don't want to confront it head on. And you're the person, like, if I lose some good people because they don't want to get vaccinated, it affects me immediately. It'll affect the organization, not quite as much, because why? Why wouldn't it affect them as much immediately?
Well, they'll hire someone new
Mhm.
that
Right.
will do the job.
And what happens in the interim?
You take the work.
Yeah. So I have to
The
step
work
it
will still
up.
get done from their vantage point.
Yep.
You're the one that's.
And to Rebecca's point earlier, they'll just keep adding, hey, you know what, this person left and this job got done. Maybe you don't have to fill that job now. Let's just spread the job description a little bit wider. So it's really from you have to own these decisions, these change management decisions. And this masking issue, you're going to see some really good people leave some really good organizations.
Eric, sorry, I just thought of one other thing I wanted to mention, just because it is part of what we've been learning as well in terms of just transparency and the why behind it. When this happened, our leadership team was communicating about it was essentially all about the students, which at a university is what really everything should be. And we want these students to have the best education that they can have. So they really did do a good job of kind of painting that picture of, we're not just doing this because it's fun and we want to, you know, restrict everyone. We're doing it at the end of the day for the students, for the health of the students, for the health of our community. And so maybe putting a little bit more of that why into place helped people to understand. Again, just having that transparency was good, I think.
That's a great point, because the stakeholders now feel kind of not necessarily an obligation, but it's more of a, I guess, a uniformity where, like, I'm not sure, maybe Hannah knows this, I'm not sure if our students, well, you guys are students, did you get notification of mandate and vaccinations?
Just for you guys, because you're not a largely, you're more of a commuter school.
Yeah,
And so we don't have to give our vax cards or anything, just employees.
so now we can say, well, look, I have, we have students from New York, from Massachusetts, from Rhode Island. So even though we're primarily commuter, like we have, I oversee Res Life. And between that and transitional housing, I think we got like, I don't know, maybe 50 over there. So we have to be consistent with the decision across the board. That's going to affect both the students that are residential and the students that are commuter. And you shouldn't be held to the same standard of a residential student, because you don't have to come in and show me your meningitis vaccinations or anything like that. So by having in Maria's case, the university get out in front and just kind of say, look, we're doing this for the students, and it's for the greater good. And really what it sounds like, Maria, is they kind of like depoliticized it, where it was, hey, this is a deal. This is what we want to do, because this is what we think is going to happen. It was a good way to get out in front and handle that. So not to get everybody down, but it was kind of a real world situation that a lot of these factors that we talked about that are a reason where it's a little bit harder to implement change. You could kind of tie that in, like with COVID, uncertainty, absolutely. No motivation, why? I haven't gotten sick yet, right? Peer pressure, well, Hannah got the shot, I guess I have to get it now. Poor communication, I don't know if the students need it, right? Fear, if I get it, am I gonna get sick? Imposter syndrome, well, I'm gonna get it because, like I'm gonna virtue signal, and I'm gonna get it because it's the right thing to do. It's like, well, no, I'm gonna get it because they're making me get it. Consistency, well, why doesn't everybody have to get it? What if there is a religious exemption? And I see that all the time in housing with students that haven't been to a doctor, like their primary care. They don't want to drop $200 on a visit. So they'll say, I'm not going to show you my MMR because it's against my religion to be inoculated. It's like, okay, then just get a letter from your pastor or your minister, and we'll deal with it on that end. We have mechanisms in place to handle that situation. And again, comfortability. I mean, honestly, from a comfortability standpoint, I don't know one way or the other if we're ever going to be comfortable. As Fauci said today, the pandemic will eventually end. I mean, COVID will eventually go away, but the minute a strain hits, it's like, high alert, everybody. So anyway, let's just do a couple more of these. I'm not going to do all of them. Anybody got a particular one they'd like to handle, to jump on? I should have like a little roulette wheel here, or like a little like spin it.
I'd like to hear what people say to imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Okay. Who's got a nice rebuttal for that?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, so if anyone else wants to answer, I'm more than happy to give up the reins, but
You're
I
on-
think,
you're on
and
mute,
and
Maria.
this is
No, I'm-
probably what works. This is probably what works with me personally, is when I start to get worked up about a change, my good managers have been like, all right, let's take a step back. The last time that you had a big change happen, let's talk through that. How did that work? What caused you concern? You know, what was the end result of that? Because more often than not, I jump into it and, you know, it works out for the most part. So I think part of that is kind of stepping back a little bit and saying, all right, well, what happened the last time there was a big change? And let's talk about what that looked like and what that could look like for the next one.
You go lay down.
So do you think before you left the college, did you have that kind of conversation?
Yes. With myself, you mean? About starting a new job?
Well, did you have it with yourself? Did you have it with leadership where, you know, you kind of like took that walk down memory lane and said, this is how I got to where I am? And because it is a huge change that you're taking on.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did, but I knew at the university, I didn't make the decision super lightly, and I just kind of knew that there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me down the road, and the job that I was in, I just didn't enjoy at all. And so I think it was more along those lines, I guess. But I was also moving into a more senior position in my new role, and I was nervous about that. So I did sort of talk about the fact in my head, and even with my boss when I gave my notice, talk about what I was concerned about, but also what I felt like I could do based on, you know, what I had jumped into before, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean, you took your blinders off and you looked at every side of it, right? Because there's some part that you want to convince yourself. I mean, let's face it, even the greatest job in the world is still going to have some areas of which you're probably not thrilled with, but it's always that grass is greener mentality. So if you can, I mean, that's again, the introspective piece where you just take yourself, kind of remove yourself from the situation and look at all sides of it. Because the boring analogy that I'm going to use is the house, right? 4 sides of the house, 4 different perspectives. So maybe like maybe you shift over 90 degrees and you look at a different side of the house and make that change. So you don't have, you have the ability to kind of make that assessment with a clear head. And if you can get external feedback in the process of making a decision like that, that's great. But if you look at the internal feedback that Sal got when he said, yeah, I'm looking at taking another job. Okay, see you later. Like that just leaves you with such a lousy taste in your mouth that you're not going to make a decision as much on what's best for me as how can I screw this company over right now? Like, that's just, there's a lot of spite involved in that decision. Like, I don't owe them anything. No, I just tossed away 9 years of my life. So I think that the more people you can get to convince you of who you are, that can show you, and again, that if you're taking that walk down, that walk down memory lane, you're kind of being true to yourself and how you got to where you are, and who you are and why you're there. You need that external support that can talk to you to that fact, to that level, somebody that knows you well, not somebody that you worked with for 6 months, but somebody that actually, you know, friends, family that know you. And when you're talking about, when you're making that, having that discussion with somebody that's against a change, and is really because they're convinced that who they are based on maybe a sampling of what they've done, and it's the leader's, I guess, the leader's obligation in that particular situation is to get them out of a pragmatist viewpoint and to look a little bit more globally. And do you guys know the difference between a pragmatist, right? Do you know what a pragmatist does? They're like, and I hate to say it, I really think I'm a pragmatist. That kind of dabbles in some of the bigger thinking, but I'm very much focused on, this is how we're gonna do it, and that's the strategy. I mean, you wanna make sure that you're dotting your i's, crossing your t's, but you have to be able to allow yourself to look down the road. But anyway, any other comments we want to talk about with imposter syndrome? And how we would talk to somebody regarding change? No? Hannah, how about some change in your world in leadership recently?
Well, I have a brand new supervisor in the last 2 weeks,
And if
brand new.
you're not up to talking, let me know, because I know.
No, I'm good. I just feel bad. The kids keep coming down. That's why I have the mask on, because they refuse to leave me alone for virtual school. But no, I have a new supervisor. So, I mean, it's a whole new world. I said today, it's sort of like I have the same job, but it feels like a brand new job. So it's a lot of change,
So a couple of weeks ago, on that Tuesday afternoon, when that conversation was happening, right? Were
Yeah.
you looking at it as, this is a good opportunity? Were you looking at the positives? Did you see any negatives to it?
I think I mean, like 80% positive, 20% was negative. Just because, so I will be very honest, the 20% was all personal. It was not professional. It was, I don't want a new boss now. I got a lot on my plate. It's the holidays, like blah, 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 right? Like that's so personal and that's selfish. But 80% it's a positive. There, it's an opportunity to have somebody else, to have a fresh set of eyes, look at the work I do, to work with my team and I to sort of, but really figure out what our return on investment is. And it's funny, like our research and our development of how we do our work. So it's a good thing. I will be honest though, when I said peer pressure, there was a little bit that day we got the announcement or we were told, I was like, oh my God, are we going to be team yes? Or are we going to be team no as a group? And so I was ready for this like peer pressure experience to happen. But it never happened. But I think I was just looking out. It's funny, I said peer pressure today too, but I was waiting for, we need to be team, whatever their name was, as opposed to team new boss. So,
I'm using Hannah as an example because like the situation that she was in, I do want to say like, there were some folks that, and I'm very tight with your old boss. He was at 2 different schools and.
yeah, it's great. It's great.
So, but there was some like there was a little bit of an imposter syndrome working there because there was just a lot, there was kind of 2 different mindsets, it's like working at McDonald's and Burger King at the same time. And so in his delivery of, hey, this change is happening, and I'm third party or second party actually, talking to him, was delivered by him to put you guys at ease.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a class move by an organization to say, yeah, here, your terms, this is what we want, if you can do this, would you do this? And so not everybody has that opportunity, but he had to put on this is what I want to do, and tell a team that he helped develop that he's leaving to go into different directions, in a different direction now. So, but it was an experience that could be life-changing, because what if you get somebody in here that's not somebody that you're compatible with, that you're 20% of the, I'm on board, but this is, what if this person comes in? And so But I think through continued conversations, you're going to be able to see that it's a good opportunity for you as an individual in the department and for the organization. So let's just do one.
It could have happened after May of next year. I'm just saying. No,
Then we wouldn't have anything to talk about in class, Hannah.
I know. See, I can tell him. I can send him a text and say, see, we used you as a learning opportunity.
He's selfless.
He is.
All right, let's do one last one. Kate, do we talk about imposter syndrome enough?
Yeah.
One last one. Don't make me pick it. How would you have a conversation? Let's go back to Cynthia's favorite case study, Vernon Road. How am I going to have a conversation with somebody that comes in and tells me, I'm afraid I'm going to get laid off? I have a fear. Now, I know these whack jobs, couldn't manage a 2-car funeral, but I have to convince somebody that they're going to be okay. That this change that's coming in, where we had that first redundancy, we laid 12 the first time. So how do I have that conversation to get them on board? But yet I know that, I'm going to be sharing an Indeed account with Sal because I'm going to be looking for jobs every night when I get home. So how do I have that conversation?
With empathy and with honesty. I have had to have it a lot of times in 2020. We went through 2 rounds of layoffs. And so once people made it through the first, you had to sit and talk through. We knew another was coming. Like we had furloughs and we knew another was coming. And I'm sorry, people have heard me talk about it, but it was, I think you make yourself relatable in some ways because you're in the same boat that they are. And I don't think I obviously am very much in like the honesty thing. Like you don't sugarcoat it. You don't make like they did in Vernon Road and like made promises they couldn't keep. You don't. It was different, I think, during 2020 because there was nowhere to turn. So you just hung on to the job. Like, you know what I mean? I think that scenario looks different when you're in a world like say now, where there are a lot more opportunities. So I think that changes your conversation. I mean, the realistic part is you sometimes do have to tell people to do what's best for them.
Right.
So I think I'm just using what I had to do that time, but I think it's awful. Like leading people through the unknown, I think is one of the hardest things I've had to do. And you don't know what the answer is at the end.
Right. Nobody does.
Yeah.
We figured what was the famous first thing we heard when we heard COVID? What were we going to have to do when we first heard about COVID? What's the time frame?
Oh, 2 weeks.
15 days, slow the curve.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't really work. So, and you've got some of the smartest people in the world looking at this saying, yeah, I don't really know what's going on. But so that fear turns to panic. And to have a conversation, to have a transparent conversation where you're somewhat, you're obviously in the same position with an individual to say, hey, look, it could be, if things don't turn around, we're going to have to cut our staff by X amount of people. And, we'll have more information as that comes, but, and I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth because where you don't want to say, yeah, hey, look, management said we're laying off 20 people. You don't want to say it like that. You become then, you're not only the messenger, but you're a colleague at that point to say, this is the situation we're in. And this is the last data to come out of our corporate or our headquarters was that there's going to be some layoffs. So I will keep you posted as soon as I hear anything, but So there's really not a kumbaya, everybody hug, great moment meeting, but you have to, if I was to then go in there and say, hey, yeah, we're gonna have some layoffs. We just heard from corporate, we're gonna have some layoffs. But, you show up early for work, you stay late, you don't use all your vacation time. You're somebody that's really looking, favorable for us to keep. So if I'm dishonest with that individual and just trying to like portray them as a good employee, then almost exactly to what happened when, hey, you're my team. This is the team we're gonna go to war with. This is the team that we're gonna, turn this organization around. And then 2 weeks later, lay off another bunch of people, so there's no credibility there. Once that layoff notice comes and the person that I just said, hey, you come in early, you don't take your vacation time, which is a bad thing, by the way. You want your people to take their vacation time because they need to refresh. And then when that person ultimately does get laid off, then I have zero credibility. And plus, I would just feel like garbage lying to somebody like that. And it's, if you feel at that level to have that kind of conversation, that the person has merit, so they're going to end up on their feet. It's just a matter of when, if and how. So you just can't say something like, yeah, don't worry about it, shake it off, everything will be great, don't worry, it's all gonna be good. So, and that really, that's kind of like our crux here, having poor communication, which might, you might construe it as good communication when you go home and, you tell your spouse, your partner, like, hey, yeah, I was told I'm not gonna lose my job. And then when that layoff notice comes 2 weeks later, it's like, what the heck? What? You said I was gonna be okay. Well, it's the credibility piece that you've got to live with your decision, but you just can't look over to that person now and say, well, I really liked you, but the GM said no go. So you're out, but I'll serve as a good reference for you. It doesn't work that way. You've then at that point lost all credibility with the individual. So, and that's going to spread like wildfire amongst the staff that's kind of on the fence. So just because Kate's a nice person and she tells everybody, don't worry about it, just bring me a coffee, you'll be good. And then they have that round, they're like, wait a minute, Kate, I brought you that coffee and I'm still getting laid off. It's like, corporate, it was big shots, the headquarters. So if do you guys want to do another one or no? Got uncertainty, no motivation, peer pressure, poor communication, consistency. At the end of the day, you really just want to be able to deliver you need to be a little persuasive, yes, but not by being dishonest. You have to make sure that this individual is aware that the change will affect them. And at what level, we're not sure. We can't determine at what level that will be yet, but that we want the unified front. We value them as an employee. We value them as a colleague, as a stakeholder of the organization, that you really want to have that type of mindset of fight me on the inside, agree with me on the outside. And we talked about, I promised my last sports metaphor of the night, but like Bill Belichick from the Patriots, he'll go up to a press conference. So what's he famous for in his press conferences?
Not saying anything more than
Exactly.
he has to.
Which by not saying anything says everything, right? So he'll go up there and he might get blown out by the Giants. And in the Super Bowl, they got beat by the Giants when they had an undefeated season. And then the question was, well, why did Brady do this or that, whatever? We'll review the film. That's his answer. And he is going to review the film. He's not being disingenuous at all, but he's not going to sit there and speculate. He's not going to inflate anybody's ego. He's not going to say, well, the Giants just outcoached us today and they did a better job and they executed. No, he's just going to sit there and say nothing. And there's the old adage, less is more, right? So if you can get away with something by saying less, if you can get your point across in fewer words, that's great. But out of respect to your employees and the folks that have invested time and energy and blood and sweat and tears into an organization, that you need to sit down and have that open and honest conversation with them and let them know this is how it's going to be.
It's all about balance.
And own it. It is absolutely balanced.
Because there's always has to be a level of the company line.
Mhm.
And then there's the whole honesty, empathy, relatable, you know what I mean? That
Yep.
component. It's just finding what that balance is, like what that trigger is to be able to connect with that person.
That's the total forest through the trees. You're absolutely right, because you're going to have individuals that no matter what you tell them, no matter how open and honest you are in these conversations of why they don't want to change, then they're going to see, they're going to use another colleague's example of, well, they're doing it and they haven't been here as long as me or whatever. You're going to see all these different types of excuses as to why, but you just need to be able to have that conversation where it's not some canned spiel where you're just spitting out corporate rhetoric, and it's got to come from a human being. And I think if you can develop that skill set where you're comfortable enough that, hey, you're giving them the bad news, and we're looking at doom and gloom scenario. Maybe it's not going to be a layoff. Maybe it's just going to be, maybe it's a relocation, right? Maybe the parent company is located out in Butte, Montana, and they're all from the East Coast. The family's all on the East Coast. So the fear could be real, but in the delivery of it, you're letting them know that there's other opportunities. There's ways in which you can, we can look at to keep a good employee on board, maybe look at different parts of the organization that are going to stay local. I'll give you one more quick case study. My wife worked at Mass Mutual for 20 something years. And last December, they said, see ya, we sold you guys to Empower out of Denver. So my wife's like, look, we got kids, we're not bailing. And I'm like, well, they didn't say anything yet. She goes, well, that's the way they do it. They're just going to tell us that we have to, we're either going or we're not going. I said, well, don't lose any sleep about it until you have those conversations. And in kind of, I hate to say typical Mass Mutual form, they kind of put these conversations off and they put them in, they're definitely a canned and rehearsed presentation. And they do it in batch. They don't do it in one-on-one. So it's not as genuine. It doesn't address everybody's, unique questions or fears. So then they'll have different leadership pockets reach out to the groups and say, okay, they'll reach out to the individuals. And so, my wife went from being like, that's it, I'm out, I'm gonna end up going to Denver, to now and again, this is pre-pandemic when the sale went down, and they announced the sale pre-pandemic, the sale hits, and we're all working from home. So they then kind of restructured and gave everybody the option if they wanted to work in the office or work from home, right? So now from the first day of the announcement, which again, worst thing, batch announcements, worst thing that you can do is say, hey, we sold, and all the rumors that go up to that announcement where some high level leaks come out. Well, she was convinced she was going to Denver, not her going, she would have had to quit because she wasn't going to move to Denver. But now we're, I don't know, a year into it now, right? A little over a year. And she's not thrilled with the organization. She works there. Not one person has come in and said, here's what our long-term plans are. This is where, we still have a satellite office in Enfield, Connecticut that you can work out of. It's been just total ambiguity hiding under the guise of a large corporation. So her fear is then manifested because of poor communication, right? What's her motivation to go? What's her motivation to uproot where her whole family is to move 3/4 of the way across the country? I mean, it's not like she's 21 years old, right out of college, and hey, let's get a fresh start. She's got roots, right? Uncertainty. How long are they going to be open for? How long until they sell us? So, I mean, you can check all the boxes. She is a director of strategic, no, director of, not strategic planning, director of some type of planning for, she's got like 50 direct reports. So she's having that conversation with them and dancing around to say, well, I don't know. I'll get back to you. I don't know. So it gets tiresome at her level. And then she'll go to her direct report and say, look, this is what they're asking me. And the direct report will say, well, look, we don't know yet. This different model, Empower does things differently. So anyway, it's all the ambiguity just leads to kind of the inevitable, you're not engaged. And remember, if you're not engaged, you're done. Your organization can't sustain itself without engaged employees. So any other questions? You guys want to cover anything else? We'll just wrap up with, I got a couple more slides, I think. We good?
Yeah.
All right. So again, our strategic leader, you want somebody that is more of a kind of like an analytical thinker, somebody that is data-driven. And as I said, as a pragmatist, I'm a little narrower, but you need somebody broad, somebody that's thinking global, somebody that's thinking kind of one step ahead. Definitely collaborative versus unilateral. So you can't be, we look at our dear friend, Mr. Schultz, right? Was that a collaborative decision to buy Tivana? No. What drove that decision? Ego all day long, right? So that was a unilateral move. Maybe he had a few of his henchmen that were like, yeah, good idea. But the organization supported that purchase, supported it, right? Allegedly supported it. But by supporting it, they closed 300 stores. Excuse me. So you need to have, and that's a classic example of an imposter syndrome, by the way, but you need to have that, the legitimate support of the involvement in a cluster, not necessarily as an individual. And you have to have the ability to, have that analytical ability where you do know you can follow a market trend. You can see what's working, what's not working. Like right now, you're not going to go out and open up. If $1 million fell in your lap, you're not going to go out and open up a department store because you've always wanted one. You want to open your own department store. Amazon would eat your lunch for you tomorrow, and you'd be out of business in a week. So you have to be able to kind of to see again the forest through the trees. But that analogy gets boring enough for you. And we get to our two types here. Our pragmatists, and this is, this language makes it sound like we're kind of losers, but we're really not, right? We solve daily problems, so we're always we're in the weeds, and we like that, right? We spend a lot of time historically to make decisions. We meet formally with subordinates, and don't think even pre-pandemic, but I still meet with my folks weekly just to pick their brains, to see what's going on. Act rational and cool. And it's really a kind of like a poker face where you never kind of show the ups or you don't show the downs. You look at ways in which to improve the weakness. I don't focus on the weakness. And you talk in the current. And a lot of, if you guys remember, if you look in some of your papers and some of the comments, you're talking about, you talk about, and again, Vernon Road, we're looking at a kind of a fuzzy timeline here, but you talk about it in the present tense. You always want to look at the past tense as well to create your history, and then you can then develop a trend, and you can kind of use that data to start to build different types of predictive analytic models. Then you have your algorithms. You guys remember that from 520, and you can start looking at, you can build on your pragmatic viewpoint a little bit more. And I think that's, me having a strong data side, it really helps me to kind of get out of my pragmatic kind of cocoon. You're visionary, you think broadly and very inclusive, just like Richard at Vernon Road, right? Just a total visionary, right? That's a joke, not a visionary. Advocate values, goals, vision, direction. So we'll go back to Sal. Picked on you a lot tonight, Sal. So if Sal comes in and gives his notice, right? A good leader is going to say, you know what, Sal, you shouldn't be lugging TVs. You should be over here in logistics. Why don't we have you in shipping and receiving? You've got that, you've got that aptitude, you've got an accounting background, you're somebody that can really help clean up that area. I'll tell you one of the reasons, because they don't know their employees. And that's something that happens with larger organizations where they can't have these candid conversations because they don't know the employee. They look at a resume and they look at performance reviews. And what Jack Welch said about performance reviews is people don't get honest performance reviews. He did a speaking engagement, about 1,000 people. I think it was at Harvard Business School. And he asked, okay, how many people are working? And he said, like 999 hands went up. Just about everybody's hand went up. And how many people feel they work for a visionary? And about 975 hands went up. Just a ton of hands went up, right? And how many people feel they've had an honest appraisal? How many hands went up? Like 10, right? So they're, yeah, I work for a great guy. My boss is awesome. He's a visionary. This is how many, have you ever been told exactly where you stand, what you're doing, how you're doing? No. So it's important to know and communicate that to your teams, because they're always going to think that you're going to think, hey, I'm on for the ride. Yep, I believe in it. It's good. It's great. And then Kate has a conversation with you that, hey, we got to lay off 20 people. So anyway, it's that communication piece. So you're always advocating your goals, your vision, your direction. You're letting you're aligning folks with the right positions. You're looking at them proactively instead of reactively and saying, well, maybe, I know you're leaving us, but you'd be really good in shipping. You have contact at all levels. One thing about our president that I find very refreshing is, and it's not in a phony sense, but he'll walk around and have lunch with somebody from the facilities department or grounds, all the way up to, the VP of academics. It's not, and he engages them. It's not a show. It's kind of a gift that you have that you can connect at every level. Warm, expressive, and supportive. That's a visionary. You're not afraid to tell somebody they're doing a great job. You're not somebody that's, and again, I back on my pragmatic side. and my dad used to say, I shared with you guys, that I throw compliments around like manhole covers, right? Not very often. A visionary is somebody that's always going to be expressive and be positive and let the person know that, you know, there's opportunity, okay? A visionary focuses on their strengths, speaks to future goals. So, you know, we really, as an organization where I am, we really focus on our culture. That's probably our greatest strength, is our culture. You can't buy culture, you have to build culture. But as we speak about our future goals, we know that it's not going to be an easy fix just to implement culture into other organizations that we touch. So really two different types of leader here, but from a change perspective, the pragmatist versus the visionary, when you're trying to get folks on board, you need a little more of the visionary to kind of at least elicit a little more of a favorable response. And you can build on that 70% to try to pull them into that top 20. Everybody kind of following along with this?
Yep.
All right. Our CEO's role in strategic change, kind of like I was talking about with our president, Mark, you're out in front, you're creating. Now, when you talk about the creating piece, you're not rolling up your sleeves and getting in there and doing everything. You're creating the team that's going to help build this implementation. You're always revising. You're always looking at ways in which you can get better. There are situations where you'll see, like at an organization like ours, that we have a cabinet, and then we have a board of trustees, and the board of trustees has final say. And the president reports to the board of trustees. So if the president wants to do something and the board of trustees says, no, not happening, the president leaves the room. Is he frowning? No. Inside maybe, but definitely he's going to behave the strategy. He's going to do the things that the organization has decided we're going to do. He's going to take on that role now. You can call it imposter syndrome, but it's that unified front where the board wants to do this, so this is what we're going to do. Hold others accountable and frequently visit and revise your strategy. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. It's not a one and done. It's not something that you put on the shelf, check the box. You're always going to be looking at your strategy. You're always going to be looking at ways in which to improve it. You can see that even if we had a great strategy going into 2021, we can now look and say, we're going to lose X number of employees in 2022 that are refusing to get vaccinated. There's nothing we can do about that. We have to proactively now try to find employees to backfill positions. But if we didn't look at that as part of our strategy, it would hit us blindsided, and we would end up, we would end up not, it would slow us down incredibly. So, because like we talked about earlier, when I lose a good person, it's not going to affect the leadership of the organization as much immediately as it's going to affect me, because I'm going to make sure that everything gets done. So, phases for achieving strategic change. You gain approval, so you get the stakeholders on board. So remember, we're not going to get everybody on board, but we want to get as many as we can in agreement. And the ones that aren't in agreement, we want to make sure that they understand what's going on, they understand the ramifications, they understand how everything's going to play out. we want to achieve an early positive impact. So we do that by these tiny little pilots. We'll run small pilots. And by the way, Maria, this is the font I can't stand when it does that shadow font. So, so we build our small pilots, we get our wins. We create competitive logic. So we talk to it, we look within, we look inward, and we start working with different leaders within the organization. So we can basically get all types of different feedback. So we know from surveys and so forth, we know what's working, we know what's not working. Now we want to get it from the inside. So we're going to come up with something that makes us unique. Like the Coke example we used a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. New Coke absolutely sucked. Nobody bought it, but it didn't affect old Coke because they were able to not miss a beat because they had that competitive advantage because they worked internally to shift gears. They didn't let it just kind of fester. They took the feedback internally. They listened to the folks externally. Fit people with positions, reassign personnel to match needed capabilities. We're going to throw Sal over in shipping. Sal, you probably hate shipping, but I was using it as an example.
I hate to work with, but yes.
So you find, you put the square pegs in the square holes and the round pegs in the round holes, but it takes you to understand that individual. You can't just do it because, hey, there's an opening there, he's not happy here, put him over here type thing. Mobile energy, deeper involvement and buy-in. So you definitely want to kind of grow that and foster that. And a good leader, a good visionary who's that warm, engaging individual that's going to walk around and patting folks on the back and telling them what a great job they're doing. Those are the folks that are selling this part of the change. After workforce skills and behaviors, ensure proper communication and training. This particular bullet reminds me so much of Nokia when Nokia had to reinvent itself a number of times, but at the last one being where they had to go into the networking field and kind of reinvent themselves completely. Well, they're in technology. This was a little more of kind of like the software side of technology, and they were so thorough in their communication with the Norwegian government and the Finns. They made sure, because the workforce that they were affecting, they wanted to make sure that everybody knew there was a positive outcome, even though they were almost at a disastrous level of losing everything. So it was, they trained these folks, they did a lot for the government. It was pretty good case study to read up on, but this is not a 4D, so to speak. You got your political behaviors to watch out for, your peer rivalries. That's when we talked about, you're going to have some folks that are like, to just get back one step. Our quadrant here, so you've got your low, your low, high, your low, high, your high, high. So obviously we want to be in the high, right? That's where we want to end up before I start talking about the behaviors to watch out for. So on our left-hand margin here, and this is a glorified SWOT that you guys can work with when you're looking at some of your final and your presentation. But when you're trying to convince, you want to throw folks into this mix to see where they're going to end up in the grand scheme of things when you're putting the change together. So this particular side, you've got your willingness of managers to join the CEO on the strategy. So these are the folks that are on board. Okay, these are the managers that are on board. And then you've got your willingness of your CEO to assert influence on strategy. So this is the boss saying, this is what I want, okay? So obviously, when you've got a pure rivalry, when you got two folks that are like, I want that job, no, I want that job, no, this is what I should be doing. You've got a pure rivalry, that's a low, okay? That's an interaction that's not gonna typically end well. It's, again, ego-driven. Then you've got the CEO that's not really looking to influence the strategy, but you've got management that's like, yeah, let's do it, let's do this. So there's a passive loyalty there. Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not obviously as optimal as having a consensus, an active consensus. So the passive loyalty, you'll get through it, but there's just so much bureaucracy you're gonna have to get through. And that's gonna lead to considerable delays. So now we look at our CEO is definitely gonna start asserting that influence on strategy, but the management is not super on board. So you've got covert resistance. What does covert resistance mean? It's not the name of a movie, although it would be a good one,
I mean,
right?
like the definition we're looking at?
Yeah, so give me an example of covert resistance.
Would it? No, I don't know. I was gonna say, would it be someone who's like acting like they're going along with the process, but not?
Yes,
Okay.
so
Like acting like a champion, but then they're like having water cooler conversations about like
Like-
how bad this is.
exactly. So that's kind of the imposter syndrome thing again, but they're not on board. They'll tell you they're on board, but they're not on board. So that means your boss, the CEO thinks, yeah, everybody's good, but the managers are like, yeah, whatever. He can think what he wants, or she can think what she wants. This is not happening. But then you got your high highs. So management's on board, okay, with the joining into the strategy, and leadership, the CEO is on board. You got an active consensus. With active consensus, boom, things happen. Things are going to happen with the rest, but this quadrant's the optimal when you get your management and your leadership on board, that are both looking at basically the metaphor, pulling the rope in the same direction. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. Now, this is, we talked about this a little bit earlier too, but this little circle here, just, it shows you that when you try to align the culture, okay, so you've got your folks that this is what you want to do. This is what we decided as an organization we want to do. You got to empower your folks. Then you've got to redesign systems, because you've got your allies now, okay? These are the folks that are going to help us out to get this change going. If we skip any of these arrows, they essentially revert right back to aligning culture. So we constantly communicate, we let them know what's going on, we make sure they're aware of it, we keep them apprised, we send them memos, send them emails. And then we're always looking to say, this is not a one and done. We're going to be, evolution is a natural piece of the organization's strategy. We're going to be constantly, not at the cost of the organization, but we're going to do things in which we're looking to constantly build better and reinvent and make sure that we have things that are working. But the cycle is so similar. It's a pretty simple cycle, but you just want to make sure, again, that piece is you're communicating with your staff and your employees that this is a great exercise. Be ready, it's going to happen again. Our fragility piece, very similar. Change less and achieve more. You run water through the pipes. Pilot. That was my bad impersonation of the pilot previous weeks. So, and pilots are so super important, and don't ever limit yourself to say, I'm only going to run one pilot, because pilots are pretty painless. You can run 10 or 15 of them. Particular project that I've been working on for the last few years, we've had at least 10 pilots, just to make sure it's just continually being fine-tuned while it's implemented. Kind of a work in progress type thing. Pace and get rhythm right, figure out when you're going to launch this, how you're going to launch it. And this is going to be important when you're final, because you want to make sure you stagger this thing. You're not going to throw everything at the wall at once. You're going to want to make sure that it's basically measured and paced. Be the change. So you got to be the person that that kind of, the mindset of the supporter, not necessarily the person in the trenches, but the supporter, kind of like the Jerry, if you're looking at it from our Vernon Road video, with the suggestions and the positive attitude and the reinforcement. And then dedicate time for introspection, and make sure you're getting feedback from your stakeholders, because it might look good on paper, but it could definitely be a total flop if you're not getting that information back. And you're gonna get a lot of information back through your pilots and then through your interviews with your staff and your personnel. So I have rambled through 16 slides tonight.
8:50 on the dot. Look at that.
I swore at like 8:50, I'm like, oh, we'll be out of here in a few minutes, but no, I apologize. Actually, no, I think I have like 29 seconds left on this clock right here. So you guys have any questions?
I think we're first.
Burnt. Sal's getting the arm ready for the,
We've effectively muzzled Hannah as well with the mask, so I think we're okay.
that is effective change right there.
But you're right, yeah, the arms twitching for the slots.
All right, so text, if you need anything, you got your portfolios due, your portfolio assignment due next Tuesday, right? Tuesday night?
14.
The 14th. Then the next week is your final. You're presenting.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, the portfolio's due next, the 14th is when the presentation.
The presentation, the
Sorry.
portfolio is, you're
I
gonna
know.
do the portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Week 5, yeah.
I'm talking two, this is week 5, not week 7, only 2 weeks.
You're presenting the last week.
Oh,
So, yeah.
All right, so,
Hold on, say that, Eric, the portfolio's due Tuesday, the 7th, right?
I messed
Yes.
up. I get the words mixed up.
yes.
Okay, no, I saw Eric shake his head and I didn't hear anything else and I was like, oh my God, okay.
No,
Papers due Tuesday.
that paper's due
Okay.
Tuesday, then you have that self paper that's gonna be due the following week.
Yeah.
Then you present your final the following week for that. So you don't have to write anything after, you have 2 more papers to write. Yeah, you got your,
Today.
your- yep, this week 5 one, then you've got the week 6 one, then you present your final week 7.
We'll have the week 6 papers due the same week, as the final presentation.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You only have 2 more classes.
Because we started the day after, or we started the first night of, no, did I? We start the first night of the mod? Anyway, the way the cycle started, we couldn't assign anything that first week. So it gets you, we submit that last week, even though we're presenting our final. We're not having, you don't have to write anything for your final, you're just presenting your PowerPoint, which I'll look those over the next couple of days and get your feedback to you.
Eric, I'm coming down to present in person, so you have to leave us time to go out for drinks afterwards.
Neil,
And you can come too. You're welcome to join us.
oh, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, are you gonna do you gonna do something further north, like Agawam-ish, or?
Maybe. I got a couple really shady spots that my dad's work friends go to, so I can.
It's near Eric. Eric
I
knows
can
those
find
shady
something.
spots, maybe.
Listen, the Commonwealth MGM Happy Media.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
the MGM. Sal's got the
Oh,
high.
yeah, we could go. Yeah, we could go to Springfield.
I'm not driving up to Springfield from here.
Everyone can stay at my parents' house.
We'll do our presentations at the casino.
Perfect.
In that case, you could get it.
All right, so we're all good?
Yes.
All right, I'll see you guys next week. Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, guys.